Okay, welcome to the first YouTube video ever. This is a 2-day project that I'm going to be bringing you guys along on, and we are going to have a POV from my partner and the flooring contractor, Kevin, who is going to be giving you guys step-by-step instructions on how to create a metallic epoxy floor. All right, we're gonna cut to me meeting up with Kevin and the boys once we get to the job site, and we're gonna start talking about the prep.
When we pull up to a job site, you most likely want to look over the whole floor before you start, intelling and seeing what the floor needs to get done before we start. So a lot of the times we tell our customers a rough process of what's going to happen, but when you see the floor in person, you will see a lot more imperfections, any kind of issues with the floor. So when we do pull up, you will assess the floor. So if it has any moisture issues, any problems, any major cracks that are going to show through, that need to be, given a little more extra care. So you'll see that right away. And when we start grinding the floor, you will see a lot more imperfections start to show through. In that process, you will start to see either cracks, holes, or like big divots start to show through. So after you start grinding, and the most important thing about grinding is using the right segments on the right concrete and taking your time on grinding the floor. You got to walk slowly. I usually like saying, you kind of count at 1 Mississippi at a time, like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi as you're walking the grinder. That will get you a nice even grind over the floor, because if you don't, you'll get a lot of unevenness, a lot of swirl marks that are gonna just show through or be just not beautiful with the final finish.
And as someone, I don't have a mic, but as someone who has never pushed a grinder before, when I was pushing it, the grinder is pulling forward. So you have to control it. You can't just push it like you think you'd push it. You gotta like hold it. It's kind of a beast, but yeah,
the machine itself does a lot of the work. You just need to hold the machine back so it doesn't get ahead of you too far. So you just pace the machine at its movement. So you don't really have to put too much effort or work into it. It's really easy. All you gotta do is just kind of hold it back from letting it go.
Hard. It's just,
it's really simple. It's a technique. Yeah, exactly. There's the tricks of the trade is something you start to pick up as you take more time in doing the floors. It's really not hard. The the concept of doing a floor is honestly not that hard. It's just taking the time and practice and learning all the ins and outs of it. So like I said, you'll start to notice little things when you do pull up to job sites. You also got to look at the right segments you're going to use for your grinder. Today we're using 1820s. So 1820s are a very aggressive bond, and that usually happens because I use those for older floors or I'm removing the coating on the floor. If there is like a coating, there's like a Home Depot coating or an epoxy coating, I would eventually end up having to use PCDs. PCDs are going to be the aggressive removal for coatings. But like an old concrete that has stains and stuff, you can just use 1820s and literally perfect. It'll rip up the floor just the way you needed it to be. This is a low-key hack. So these are both the same. These are both literally going to do the same process, but one's $36 and one's $27. You're always about trying to save money on your products, okay? So don't always try to go for this just because it says high build, whatever. That's dumb. Literally, it's going to do the same thing. It dries in 15 to 20 minutes. That's literally what I'm looking for. So grinding is done. Now we're going to remove everything off the floor and start vacuuming everything off. And then we'll start looking at all the cracks that we need to patch and fill in. And we're gonna try to leave the cracks nice and seamless so we don't have to regrind it again. That's perfect. Now that the floor has been cleaned, now we can see all of the exposed imperfections of the floor. So as you walk around, you see kind of little small hairline cracks, stuff like this, like little imperfections like this where the crack's running, little imperfections like this. This needs to probably be popped off and cleaned out. Patch all these cracks and imperfections. This is going to be the huge key when it comes to doing any type of floor. So it's like if we're doing a flake finish, you don't need to be as precise and perfect, because with the flake finish, it kind of helps hide a lot of imperfections. But when it comes to doing either a solid color or metallic, we need to actually take our time to be very meticulous and patch every possible hole and crack that we can see, because they will show through in your metallics or any solid color finishes you decide to do. With that being said, so we're going to start patching right now. We're going to patch all these big cracks, big holes, and make this look like it never had cracks once. That's going to set you apart from your competition, those little details. So when you're patching, I always tell people to use 2 fingers. So put 2 fingers like you're doing the peace sign. And you want to like use it like a spatula, like you're trying to fill in the hole. So grab some and push it into the crack. And then what I'd like to do is just come back and just kind of give it a nice little butter down squeeze. So that's how you get a nice little smooth. My goal is to leave it as smooth as possible so we don't have to come back and retreat to crack. But if you do leave some a little bit behind, it's not a big problem. You can always come back and chip it off. Patching, we want to make sure that we get every single crack as you're noticing. Crack, 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 hole, hole. Everything needs to be perfectly patched even before we even put any type of coating. The nice thing is that with metallics, it's a little more forgiving. So if we're gonna put our first coat down, we come back the following day and whatever we missed, we can repatch again and make it leave a very perfect showroom floor. That's what you want. So now this is gonna be the step before we start putting down the coating. We just wanna make sure we walk through the whole floor and we look at every single part of the floor to make sure that we didn't miss anything that needed to be patched, fixed, repaired. So we walk the floor and make sure everything's nice and clean. You make sure that you don't see any imperfections that you want to take care of, like anything that just really stands out. So all the cracks are all patched, all the little things are done. So now the floor is all grinded and vacuumed and blown out, so everything's clean. And this is just kind of like a final inspection before we put a coating down. If there's a couple holes and cracks that get away, it's not the end of the world because we're still going to put another coating down on top of it so we can come back and we can see all the other imperfections that we missed. That's a nice thing about metallic. Since we do 2 coats, the first coat is just kind of expose everything. But now that the floor is prepped and ready, we can start mixing colors, we start mixing the epoxy, and start putting down our first base. So before you start, working on your coatings, you're going to make sure you want to have these things set up and ready to go. So you're going to have anywhere from like a 6 to 8 foot pool with your magic trowel stick on one pool. You're gonna know another pool, same thing with the roller flame with an 18-inch lint-free roller. Keyword is lint-free because you will get little lints left over on the roller, on the epoxy. And depending on what kind of finishes, if you're doing a solid color, you want to make sure it's lint-free, and then actually on top of that, you put tape on it and clean it off really well. But since it's gonna be a base coat, it's not really gonna matter if we leave a little bit of lint, but I usually use lint-free rollers. Then you're gonna want a 6-inch mini roller because you're gonna do cutting along the edge of the concrete perimeter, and then whatever size brushes you want. I usually use 3 brushes, 3-inch brushes because they're really nice. You can get cut corners really well. Some people like 4 inches, but they're a little bit too big and clunky. I think these are perfect. So pretty much what you need. And don't forget your going out shoes, your spiky shoes, which I don't know where they are, but since I have my Pimp My Ride right here, they store my popping, going out shoes. Make sure you have these on deck, because these are the most important things you'll need. So when it comes to doing your coatings, for a new beginner, I highly recommend using an epoxy that's gonna take anywhere from 8 to 12 hours to cure. The reason why I'm saying that is because if you don't have the experience to work with this material, it's an A and B component. So once you mix the A and the B component, they will start to heat up. You have about, I wanna say 20 to 30 minutes of lifetime inside of the bucket. When you put on the floor, you probably have anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes with moving it. Then it starts to get tacky and really thick. When you have more expertise and the more you've learned about using the epoxy and how long, you can play with it and, move it around, you start moving up to like materials where it's already accelerated. It's fast plus, something like this, where it's already pre-accelerated. So once you put this in here, this will be fully dry within 2 hours instead of 8 to 12 hours. So be very cautious when you guys, use epoxy, because if you don't know how to use it, you'll just waste money. That's kind of the biggest thing that you're gonna learn probably the hard way. You won't learn until you actually get on the floor. I just poured into this bucket. I used my measurements. So your epoxies are usually a 2-to-1 ratio. So it'll tell you here, it's a 2-to-1 ratio. It says ratio 2-to-1. So if I fill this up to about 1 liter, I'm gonna fill it up to 1.5 with my B component. So this is my B component. So I just poured A into this bucket and I'm gonna pour my B. So I have 1 liter, I'm gonna go about to 1.5 because it's 2-to-1 ratio. But this is gonna be accelerated, so I'm gonna have to work extremely quickly to put this on the floor. So usually you like to mix this thoroughly from anywhere from about 1 minute to 2 minutes. You wanna mix it really well. So keep going. All right, that should be good. All right, doesn't really matter because it's already mixed. It will only matter if it was only the A component by itself. So I'm just pouring a little bit to give him so he can help me cut the floor. Ow. My ass hurts. My legs hurt.
Mic'd up, brother.
Oh, shoot. You have to cut all of this out then.
Nope, I'm not editing. So,
so you want to get your brush really, really wet. And you just start cutting it. It's really easy. So whatever I'm not getting, this roller is just meant to get the floor and the face of the wall. Him over there with the roller, with the brush, he's gonna come back over here and get all of the edges that I missed on the floor so it doesn't sit in the bucket, because when you do leave the material in the bucket, like I said, you only have a certain amount of working time. It's called a pot life. You only have between 15 to 35 minutes of pot life because it'll harden and start to smoke. So what I like to do is just pour everything on the floor. As long as I don't smack my head. Pour everything on the floor, so at least the coolness, the freshness of the concrete, because the concrete is always like 10 degrees colder than the temperature outside. It will help slow down the drying process. There is not really, I can't really say there's a technique. It's just more of a feel, the way you move the squeegee. So usually you like to have your dominant hand, which is going to be either your right or left, depending on whatever you are. If you're left, like this. If you're right, this way. Your dominant hand is going to be on the bottom of the pool, and your other hand is going to be on the top of the pool. This one is going to give you the leverage up and down for the squeegee. This one's going to give you your pressure. So you want to start off with one corner and kind of just use a little bit of, I use a lot of pressure. See, like when there's things in the way, you kind of have to do it at an angle. And then kind of press it down and squeegee it and move it at the same time. So as you can tell, my hand is pushing up and this hand is pushing down at the same time, which will give me the most tightest like stretch on the epoxy, which I'm not trying to stretch it too much, but I'm trying to, you know, make sure you don't leave it too thick and you're wasting material. So that's why I'm saying it's a feel. You have to feel it. You won't understand until you actually try it. So once you guys get on the floor, you'll start to feel like all the material underneath the squeegee. It's more of a feeling. So once I do that, I just start moving in the line, working my way down all the way back. So when I finish doing all of the areas that didn't have epoxy, now that everything's completely filled, I usually like to start from the back and work my way forward, because usually what happens is that you tend to leave it thicker back here and thinner in the front. So when you start from the back, what you'll do is that you push material forward, and your whole goal of rolling the floor is to leave everything nice and consistent throughout the floor. So congruent, and everything's nice and smooth over the whole floor. Everything looks even. And what I do is that usually I will go down one lane like this, and then I'll backpedal the same way. So I'll go up the lane the same way I went down. Right? But if there's objects in the way, just break them. So I'll just go like this. But you want to put a little pep in your foot, because you know you can't do things slowly in life. Don't worry about slipping and sliding. Like if your foot slide like that, it won't do any damage to the floor. Like you're not gonna hurt it, because anyways you're gonna cover it right now. So don't think it's the end of the world if you slip and you do this, because it's gonna be rolled over once again. Let me show you up close. So don't worry if you're doing this over the floor. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, you're gonna cover it. So don't be super nitpicky about all the little details. The whole point is trying to get this done quickly, because it's gonna start to set soon. So just try to move one hand, roll, come back up. It's not hard. Like I said, it's just more about learning the technique. Go down. And like if you see the reason why I like to start from the top too is because you'll start to see a little puddle. So like right here it's really smooth. Now there's some unevenness. So there's like a little puddle right here, which I went over. So what I'll do is that I'll go back and forth, long strokes, to even out that puddle. Because you don't want to leave that puddle, because that puddle is going to stay there and it's going to be uneven on the floor. So you want to leave everything nice and even. This is just the first process. We're going to cross roll it. So cross rolling is also going to help smooth out even more. So we'll get to that in the next. So even though this finish area looks amazing as it is, a lot of people may try to get by with just doing this coat. But the thing about epoxy, yes, it looks beautiful already finished, but the thing is that epoxy does turn yellow in the sun or with heat. So with hot tires, epoxy will turn yellow. It will leave yellow tire marks, or it will start to amber in the front. So this only acts as a base coat, and epoxy is a base coat. It's to help seal the cuticles of the concrete and to secure the concrete. So when we put our second, third, whatever, how many coats you're going to put on the floor, it helps protect the concrete, but it also acts as a bonding agent. So you can't just leave it as is, because it's not the finished product. And I'm gonna call you back. The process usually for flooring and epoxy isn't really hard. It's just tedious and time consuming. We started at 10. It's about 12:50, almost 1 o'clock. So it was about 3 hours to grind it, patch it, and to drop a base coat. And that's the end of your day. Tomorrow should probably take us another 3 to 4 hours at most, maybe even less. And we should be done with everything by tomorrow.
So 8 hours of work, and how much does this cost?
If you sell a job like this, a metallic floor, and you guys are capable of handling the colors you guys yourselves and the design, it's gonna roughly take you anywhere between 8 to 12 hours to complete, depending if you're gonna add an extra day. Price for material, what it costs you is gonna probably cost you anywhere between $600 to $1,000. That's about the price range, depending on how many colors the customer wants to go with, the base coats, how heavy he wants a certain colors to be. So that's gonna be a fluctuation between. So you're gonna have an idea of $600 to $1,000 in product. But usually these floors sell anywhere between 4 to 5 grand. So your profit is still gonna be anywhere from 3 to 4 grand, and then including labor work if you have someone else help you and do the floor, or if you have someone to prep it and do it all for you, you're still gonna make money. You're gonna still at least make over 50% of your initial investment.